Welcome, everyone. We see you're joining, and as those of you who are online are logging in and getting connected, we'll just start in about 1 minute. So thank you for joining us today. Again, thank you. It looks like we've got a couple hundred of you here into the webinar, and a few others will be joining over the next 30 seconds or so, and so we'll get started in just a half a minute. But thank you very much for joining. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started, and would just like to welcome you. Thank you for taking a part of the end of July to spend together this afternoon. Some of you are in time zones where it's still morning, so we appreciate that, and some of you are into evening, but it's really a remarkable opportunity to connect and with one another, but also with the perspectives of those people who live within our nation as we do that through the Public Viewpoint Survey. We're appreciative today. We're looking at the public perspectives about online and hybrid and in-person education platforms for education and training after high school. I was thinking back to my days as a physics major and thinking about the triple point of water, where water actually exists as vapor, a gas, and as a liquid and as a solid ice all at the same time. And the constraints are the temperature and the pressure. And really, if you think about temperature representing energy and pressure representing the space and the constraints, it's interesting to me that we see this balance in the public perspectives of how do they view online education, online only, hybrid opportunities, and in-person. And we're kind of at this triple point space right now in the American public's perspective. So Andrew Hansen, my colleague at the Center for Consumer Insights, is going to share our findings this week. We're very grateful to have Keisha Foggs with us. Keisha is a second-year student studying cybersecurity at the American Women's College at Bay Path University. We appreciate her time and her experiences she'll share from the front lines. Dr. Becky Takeda Tinker is the CEO and co-founder of Colorado State University Global Campus. So her career as an innovator and bringing these solutions to bear will be invaluable. And very appreciative to Dr. Marnie Baker-Stein, who's currently the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Western Governors University. We look forward to hearing from them. We'll have Andrew, if we'll turn it over to you to walk us through these findings that you've been immersed in uncovering and curating for us today. And after Andrew, we'll move to some question and answer discussion with the panelists. For those of you in the audience, we will be taking your questions in that question and answer period. So you can use the Q&A function on the webinar to submit those. And please do take advantage of that, as we'll come back to you in about 20 minutes and start that dialogue. But thank you all, and thank you, Andrew.
Well, thank you, Dave. Over the past 4 months, I think, our lives have become so much more virtual. Many Americans have had to rapidly adapt, whether it's spending, more of our waking hours on Zoom meetings or Zoom webinars like this one, whether it's sending our kids to school virtually, or the tens of millions of students and working learners who have had to move their learning online. Of course, we've seen as well many colleges and universities announce that they're going online this fall. And we expect to see more of those kinds of announcements in the coming month. The question for us is, are these going to be changes that are temporary, or are we at a sort of inflection point for post-high school education in America, where online and hybrid learning models really become the new normal? So even before the COVID-19 pandemic, we've observed this rapid growth of online education, across the post-secondary sector, with the share of students who are enrolled in an exclusively in-person programs declined by 10 percentage points in just 5 years, and a corresponding increase in the share who were enrolled in exclusively online or hybrid programs. In the aggregate, what that means is in 5 years between 2013 and 2018, 2 million fewer students were enrolled in in-person education and around 2 million more students in those online and hybrid programs. And the most rapid growth actually took place in the public and private nonprofit sectors. One of the most striking trends that we've also seen over the past 2 decades is this rise of the so-called mega universities like Western Governors University and Southern New Hampshire University, among others, who are now enrolling more than 100,000 students. So as Americans are navigating this economic crisis as well as the disruptions to education, we've been surveying now more than 14,000 Americans over the past 4 months to try to better understand their experiences with, as well as their perspectives on post-secondary education and training. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Public Viewpoint, which Dave alluded to, is a weekly survey of 1,000 adults that are 18 and older, that is nationally representative by sex, by race, ethnicity, by age, educational attainment, and the 9 geographic census regions. This week, we asked our survey respondents specifically about online education. What are their plans? What are their preferences? And what are their perceptions of its quality and value in comparison to in-person education? And we analyzed those results by a number of demographic groups, by educational attainment, age, sex, race, ethnicity, and income. And then just one other housekeeping note before I dig into the analysis, which is that while our analysis primarily relies on the Public Viewpoint survey, we've also included a few results from our Strata Gallup education consumer surveys as well, and those are footnoted. So with that, let's dig in. So we first asked Americans about their plans and preferences when it comes to online education, and specifically whether they are likely to enroll in an online education or training program within the next 6 months. And we got about 1 out of 10 of our survey respondents who said they were very or extremely likely to enroll. And that was pretty evenly split between those who said that they would elect to enroll in a traditional online program at a traditional institution, such as a 4-year college, a university, or a community college, as well as those who said that they were planning to enroll in a non-traditional, non-degree program or just skills training courses. We also asked, irrespective of your plans, if you were to enroll in an education program, what would you prefer? Online only, in person, or hybrid? And we framed this question in 2 ways. We asked people first what they would prefer to do in the next 6 months. And then we also asked them, what about if COVID-19 were not a threat? In order to get a sense of how much of their preferences are being driven or affected by the pandemic. And what we saw was that in the next 6 months, only 26% said that they'd prefer in person, with 42% preferring online only and 32% preferring hybrid. But when we asked if COVID-19 were not a threat, we did actually see an increase in the share who prefer in person from 26% to 41%. But then we also saw an enduring interest in both online only and hybrid options, with 3 out of 5 Americans combined saying they'd prefer one of those 2. When we unpack this by gender, by sex, we saw that women's education preferences appear to be much more influenced by the pandemic than men, with nearly half of women actually saying that if they enrolled in the next 6 months, they wouldn't even go hybrid, they go online only if they enrolled, compared to just a third of men. But when we asked, well, what about if COVID-19 weren't a threat, that difference completely disappears, and men and women's preferences, independent of COVID-19, are actually quite similar. We also investigated how Americans perceive the quality and value of online education. And the first question that we asked was, if you were to go on for additional education, would you be confident about the quality of online courses? And we found that nearly half of those we surveyed said that they would be confident in the quality, but a similar share said that they weren't sure. And then 13% said that they would not be confident. So about 1 out of 10 lack confidence in quality. We unpacked this by a number of different demographic characteristics, and the most variation we actually saw in this particular metric was by race. So we saw that Black Americans in particular were especially confident in the quality of online education, with 60% saying that they'd be confident in the quality of online courses, compared to, say, 43% of white Americans and a similar share of Latinos. We also asked a series of questions to kind of try to sort of unpack those perceptions of quality and value, as well, of online only versus in-person versus hybrid educational options. The questions we asked were: which format would allow you to learn most effectively? Which would be the best preparation for work success? What would give you the best chance of completing? What would be the best value for your money? And which one would you recommend to a friend or family member? And what we found actually is that Americans don't actually have a clear favorite when it comes to online only, hybrid, or in-person education. Their perspectives are strikingly diverse. There are a couple of interesting variations as you look at this data. One, in-person and hybrid, received somewhat higher ratings for which option would allow you to learn most effectively, as well as the one that would best prepare you for work. A hybrid is also the option that Americans are most likely to recommend. But I think there are really two major takeaways here from this big picture view from my perspective. One is that there really isn't a one-size-fits-all learning mode that's going to meet everyone's needs, whether that's in-person, hybrid, or online only. But two, I think if you think back to the slide I showed earlier of the current makeup of our post-secondary system, in which 2/3 of students are enrolled in programs that are in person, exclusively in person, that we may be underrating both hybrid and online only options, which also explains why we've been seeing tremendous growth in the number of learners who have been pursuing those options even before this current crisis that we're navigating. Having said all that, there were some interesting demographic variations underneath that overall picture. One, I think to many of us are not surprised necessarily, but middle-aged or mid-career adults, those between the ages of 25 and 49, are substantially more likely to perceive online only as higher quality or value than other age groups. And then again, we see that across multiple metrics of quality and value, as well as the metric that we looked at earlier, Black Americans consistently have more favorable views of online only education options compared to white Americans and Latinos. We don't yet know from a data perspective what's driving that difference, but it was certainly striking and something that we plan to investigate in our future research. So everything I've showed you so far is, we've been looking at public perspectives broadly, but we also have data on alumni of online-only colleges, specifically online-only four-year colleges. In 2019, Dave Clayton, who spoke to you earlier, as well as my colleague, Nicole Torpey-Sabo, analyzed how recent graduates of online-only four-year colleges specifically rated the value of their education compared to recent graduates of other four-year colleges, whether they were in-person or hybrid. And what they found was that recent graduates of online-only four-year colleges were substantially more likely to strongly agree that their education was worth the cost, and also somewhat more likely to say that it made them an attractive candidate to employers and that they would recommend their educational path to others. The final question that we asked in the public viewpoint survey was how Americans think that employers perceive the value of online education in comparison to in-person education or training when they're making decisions about who to hire. And what they said in the aggregate was that employers, by and large, value in-person education much more than online education, with 59% saying that employers value in-person more, and only 88% saying that employers value online education more. But of course, with across all these metrics, we know that there's a great deal of variation across institutions, across programs. But at least in the minds of Americans, online credentials that are online don't appear to carry much signaling power in the job market by themselves. So just a few final thoughts before we wrap up and get into what I believe will be a terrific discussion with our panel. Just a few final thoughts. One is, I think that it's clear that there, as I said, there's no one-size-fits-all learning option. Online and hybrid, obviously are not options for the 6% of Americans, including a quarter of Americans in rural communities who don't have access to broadband. But the question isn't, whether it's in-person, online, or hybrid that's best. It's whether there's enough of each option to meet consumers' needs. Of course, over the course of our lives, everybody's a hybrid learner. And depending on the particular learning goal at the given time in our lives, in-person, hybrid, or online may be what works best. But what's clear, as I said, based on what we're seeing in the data, is that there seems to be plenty of room for growth for both the hybrid and online-only learning options, obviously in the near term, but also in the long term as well. Second, I would say, and I'm sure we'll get into this with our panelists, but just like in-person education, not all online education is created equal. We've heard a consistent worry from leading online learning providers in particular that what many traditional institutions have been doing in this crisis in terms of posting their lectures online or delivering them online, posting their assignments to Canvas or whatever learning management system is really far removed from what is the best practice or even a very good practice. And so one clear message is that designing learning experiences for an online environment really is completely different than designing for in-person. And then the last piece I would share is this question of whether we're at an inflection point. And my belief is that the answer is yes. I think there is a strong possibility that the legacy of this crisis for post-secondary education is that it actually accelerates the long-term structural changes that we were already seeing before the crisis. It is an opportunity, I think, to unbundle, to reevaluate, to repackage all the elements that comprise the post-secondary educational experience into learning options that both meet the moment, but as well as learners' enduring needs for the long term. And just to sum up what we've been learning from the public viewpoint so far, that is options that are more targeted, that are skills-based, and as we see here, more virtual. So with that, thank you, and Dave, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and appreciate that very much. I think maybe we'll start, Keisha, and think with you, as Andrew highlighted, there doesn't seem to be a one-size-fits-all, but you chose something that has been a great fit for you from your experiences with Bay Path University. Could you tell us about how you made that decision of where to attend and how to take the program and pursue what you have, and what appealed to you about Bay Path, and were there other choices, institutions that you considered when you were making that choice?
So, first of all, hi everyone. I had started looking at online education about 2 years prior to when I actually started at the American Women's College at Bay Path. There were a few other institutions that I had looked at, and I ended up choosing the American Women's College for a few reasons. They had 5 different start dates, which definitely fit in with whether I was going to school or not going to school, whatever was going on with my life at the time. That always was very, the flexibility of that made me feel very comfortable. Also, it is a women's college, and I felt like that was going to be an affinity for myself that I really, really needed at the time. I am a non-traditional student in that I'm not, right out of high school when I started at the American Women's College. So the fact that there were going to be other women who were in all different walks of life and all different stages also was another deciding factor for me. And I'm not sure if I answered all of your question. If I missed any part, you can let me know and I can go further.
No, thank you. It's fascinating to hear about that point in your life and really the active decision making that took place over a number of years as you
Yes.
considered possibilities. It's wonderful. Becky and Marnie, Becky, maybe start with you, but students do have a lot of options, and are even members of our audience today have kind of emailed in and said, now, help me make sure I understand, what do you mean when you say online only versus what is hybrid and what is in person? And those may mean different things, different programs and institutions. But when individuals are making the decision to attend, how do you, with CSU Global, how do you help them determine whether what you have to offer and what they're seeking is a good fit? And Becky and then Marnie.
Great, thank you, Dave. And thanks to Strata for the invitation to be on this panel and to share our perspectives. We are very clear on the mission, and it runs all the way through the institution. So our marketing is aligned, our enrollment process, admissions process is aligned, our financial aid staff understand the mission. And it is really important. Fully online asynchronous, which is what CSU Global provides, is not for every learner. And so I love Andrew's slide where I think they got divided into thirds, on what they thought was most effective. It makes sense because people have different preferences. They know how they learn best. They have a different appreciation for different modalities. But we are really clear in who we are, what we're offering, and why we're offering it. So when we think about CSU Global's mission, workplace success through higher education, it's very clear on why we only have 26 or so degree programs. And we're always looking at those very carefully to make sure that our graduates or certificate completers can get a job at living wages, because that's success as we have defined it. And so the discussion with the students before they become admitted is part of that process in defining who we are and how this works. Have they ever done an online class to the level of technological capability, why they think that this is the best solution, why not a face-to-face, why not a hybrid. And we really go through that with them so that they're clear in what they're getting themselves into before they sign up, before they pay us money, and before we start them, and have them not finish. As a public state nonprofit institution, having people come in and not finish is just adding to the numbers of 36 million and more of Americans, some college, no degree, and we don't want to contribute to that. So we do a very careful vetting process, and it's a holistic view of, again, we're about workplace success. So have they ever had a job? Because our assignments will link to experiences in the workplace. It could be volunteer, but the fact is there is a tie that runs from the beginning of the outreach and all the way through, including the vetting process and their experience with all of our different departments before they actually become enrolled, start a class, pay us money, and then find that this was not the right environment for them. So we try very hard to make sure that they understand so that we can get them through to a certificate or a degree.
Marnie, WGU, any perspectives on that, helping people find the fit for their interest and aptitudes and circumstances?
Sure. Well, similarly, WGU is, for those who don't know us, we're a nonprofit online university. We are primarily online asynchronous, although we do have components of our programs that are face-to-face clinicals and related placements. So very similar in scope and approach. We are competency-based, which means that when we design our programs are sets of industry-informed competencies or skill sets that we understand and can tag to jobs and roles and functions in specific sectors. Those competencies are tagged to skills, actual skill descriptions that let a student know and let us know, you know, the sort of different types of thinking, being, doing approaches that are needed for different jobs and sectors and roles. And so when we first start talking to a student about enrolling in a particular program like a cybersecurity program or a pre-licensure teaching program or a nursing program, we can not only just talk about the program generally, but we can let them know, look, these are the competencies that you're going to master. This is how these competencies relate to skills, whether they're critical thinking skills or quantitative reasoning skills or actual technical skills that you are going to be mastering and learning in this program. This is a value of these skills in the world of work. And these are the kinds of jobs and functions and roles that you'll be able to get once you have this degree. And that is a really important first conversation, we think, for people who are deciding to go back to school is, do I really want to become this person that has this career, has this job, and what does that mean? And how is this particular degree or credential going to help me get there? So that is one way that we prepare students, and really critical to us, because we don't want them to get started in a program that they don't finish because they just figure, hey, you know, I don't like this. This isn't what I thought I was getting into. And frankly, I don't want to be that when I graduate. So that's a big part of our readiness assessment from their first conversations with our enrollment counselors. Our students have a very personalized experience with WGU. There are many conversations around our modality, what it takes to be successful in our programs, what that experience is going to be like once it starts. That conversation does not end on matriculation. Students get a longitudinal program long mentor who works with them weekly as they're doing term planning, as they're thinking about career options, as they're thinking about course sequencing that they're going to be doing within any given term as it relates to their life, the things they're juggling. And we also make sure that our instructors are there as well when they're inside a course to make sure that they're understanding how to navigate that course, as well as underscoring the value of that course and the competencies earned in that course for where the student's trying to go. So it's an ongoing process of working with the students and making sure that we are clear and they're clear what their goals are, and doing everything we can from a mentoring point of view, from an instructional point of view, from support service point of view, to make sure that they keep that alignment and that they keep making progress.
It's interesting, both Keisha and Becky and Marty, in your comments, the importance of relationship and support to both find a fit, a better relationship with an institution, within a course. And I think, Keisha, I was really struck by your desire for community and affinity in a place where you felt you would be welcomed. I wonder for you, Keisha, what that connection has been to faculty and other students, and the difference that's made in your kind of perseverance and going forward. What's that been like?
So in terms of the faculty, again, I'm a second year student, just past 2 years. And I can say that from my first course, it's called Women Empowered as Learners and Leaders, the WELL series. And from that very initial course, the support from my instructor in terms of making sure not just that we have her email and her phone number, and those types of things, but actually checking in, hi, how are you doing? Or hey, I noticed you might have been a little late with this. Is there something I can do to help you? And that has been across the board for my entire time at the university, not just the faculty, but my peers that are in class. While we may be strictly online, we do videos in our discussion forums and things like that. So we are able to kind of like bounce off of each other. And during those video discussions, you do find little snippets and little pieces of people's lives. You know, maybe a baby runs across the back, you know, while a mom is giving her video discussion or what have you. And it's like, hey, you don't have to worry about that, because guess what? My son's 6 or my son's 5 or what have you. So just realizing that you don't have to be on per se. Do you know what I mean? Like there is everyone's doing the same thing. We're all trying to get forward in our career, in our personal life, or what have you. So that definitely has been priceless in terms of me just wanting to continue chipping away at this degree. And then I can't, I'd be remiss if I failed to mention my educator coach, the director of my program. It really is just across the board at my school. Really, everyone honestly is there to see you succeed, to see you win. And it's a great feeling. Really is a great investment for me so far.
Thank you, Keisha. Last time in our last webinar, we looked and saw that people's doubt about their ability, they'd been away from school too long, they wouldn't be able to succeed in the classroom, was just as big a perceived barrier as their concerns about paying for it. And so the reality of that kind of internal feeling, I appreciate the intentionality being important in any modality of education to offer that. We saw a really strong interest in the data, and these again are public perceptions about their interests. These are not currently enrolled students or people, but it's the broader public interest, but particular interest among Black Americans and Latinos, but women. And but at the same time, less than half of Americans are very confident that the quality will be strong, and less than half believe that it's more valuable by a long shot, right, to employers. How do you kind of put together that high levels of interest, particularly in Black Americans and women, and some of those questions they may yet not be certain about quality? And Becky, do you want to start?
Thank you. Yes, we are always looking at the data amongst all of our learners individually and in groups and populations. So we know that generally speaking, our graduates in our first to third retention, our trimester to trimester retention is about equal for our populations. About 40% of our students are first in their families to go to college, about 28% are from underserved minority populations, and yet the data is fairly consistent to completion. And we know that our completion rates and our trimester to trimester rates are about double the nation's average when we look across the data from like Complete College America. But what we do is not only make sure that they're retaining, but that they're learning. So we're measuring the learning outcome achievement. We're measuring critical thinking from their first course into their next courses. We're always looking at that data. And then the most important thing that I think when we look at global and its mission is we are measuring and tracking their salary levels every year, and we've been doing this since 2009. So every year we get the graduating cohorts and we have that track. It's a third-party credit bureau who then reports back on where our graduating cohorts are, not as undergrad, grad, but also in every degree program to make sure that our graduates are getting return on investment for their money and time that they've invested in their education with us. And so far it's continuing to go up, and we'll see, with this economic issue with COVID, how that impacted our graduates. So we'll get that in October. But as we watch that, we are also looking at our employers and what their feedback is. We get that data to understand how the learning outcomes are being demonstrated and how satisfied are they with their graduates from CSU Global. And we know from the BLS data and the third-party credit bureau data that 5 years out, our graduates are upwards of 30% higher than their peers in the same industries with the same level of degrees. So we know that quality or not, depending on what American perception is, that our graduates are doing very well in the workplace and continuing to progress and move up those ladders. We also measure whether they're getting the promotions they want and are able to move careers. About 26% of our students who graduate are moving into a new career. So we're also tracking how they're doing against their peers. So that level of data analysis is, of course, really important when you're up against what we see with Andrew's report on American uncertainty of the real value and efficacy of online education. I think one other thing that is really driving home that people are getting, and this was way before COVID, but CSU Global is always getting requests from businesses. We have about 3,000 affiliate partners in industry for online education, organizational training support. So if industry is moving and they understand the value of why they would have online education for their policies and new processes that they want their employees to learn, it certainly makes sense to me that this growth of online acceptance of online education is headed in a very positive direction.
Thank you. Marnie, you may have some thoughts as well. I also think, we have perceptions, but you have enrollment trends. So you may talk to us about what's really happening on the ground.
Yeah. So just back to the question that I heard you ask, at WGU, 78% of our students are from underserved communities. 65% of our students are women. We have, and of that population, 85% work full-time while enrolled. 52% are married. Many have child-taking or caretaking roles and responsibilities at home. And I know that is why they're choosing online, because online is organized to allow them to get a degree, get a credential, and make progress while they maintain their busy lives. And they juggle their busy circumstances. And we really saw this during COVID as we were monitoring and responding to the COVID role and its impact on our students in every 50 states. Like our students who are on average 35, they were dealing with the same things we were all dealing with. Their kids were home from school. They were essential workers and getting overtime. They were frontline healthcare workers and deployed in hospitals and having to live in hotels and bunk with a roommate while they were trying to do their assessments. These are adult working people with complex lives who need an educational option that is organized for them. And most traditional campus institutions, even though they're great and they're wonderful and they offer a high quality experience, are not organized for these learners. The thing about these learners is we used to think of them as adult working professionals. I still call them adult working professionals. But we know that students who are 18 to 25, 26, the majority of those students are working as well, or caretaking as well. And we also know across those students, whether they're 18 or whether they're 35 or whether they're 65, when you're working and you're going to school and you're making that effort, because it's hard, you want a concrete value proposition out of it. It's not just about an alma mater. It's not just about a football team, although it may be about those things as well, right? We all like football. But it's about, what am I going to get out of this in the end? This is hard. And I need something that's organized for me, and I need something that is going to get me to that goal. And I think that's what we're seeing in your numbers, is the growing percentage of Americans who need to work while they're going to school and realize that an on-campus solution, while it's attractive and it's powerful and it's wonderful to walk through the campus and have that experience, it's just not for them. They can't do it. And if you look at nationally part-time enrollment data and the success rates of part-time enrolled students who are working while they're going to school, it's very low. And it's not because they don't want to do it. It's not that they can't do it. It's that school is not organized for them. And so they're reaching out to online programs and hybrid programs to just make it work. And I think when you think about women who are working and caretakers, when you think about African Americans who are coming back to school and wanting to work their way through school and work their way up through a career as they're getting their degrees or their credentials, it just makes sense that they're going for the modality that fits into their lives.
Thank you, Marty. Keisha, as we visited Monday afternoon, you really shared that some of those same sentiments that you and your classmates have experienced. And I don't know if you'd help us understand why, and those who are listening and who are working to build solutions for our nation and for individuals and communities, how that has made an impact in your life. Sorry.
So, as we had touched on the other day, the data that you have, or the data that Strata had shown about women being particularly interested, and then African Americans, and then Latinos being interested, that was the order of the data from highest to lower. And then the other data that indicated that Blacks actually were very interested in online education is exactly what my experience has been as an educational consumer. Those who are part of colleagues in these classes, obviously it's all women because it is a women's program and a women's college. However, it is also, I identify as a person of color, of mixed race, and many of my counterparts are women of color and also first-time college goers in their family, first generation of seeking, post-secondary education. And I just think that in order to actually reach those demographics, since that's the data, right, saying that these are the people that are going to be your next educational consumers. These are the people that are going to continue to beat down the door of, hey, I want some more education. Hey, I want a better career. There's definitely going to be a responsibility to, especially during this current landscape, we have issues for people of color and police, we have pandemic, we have all these different balls in the air that need to be juggled. There's a responsibility on the behalf of the institutions that are going to provide the education to make sure that not only are they making the human experience right for the educational consumers, right? So that doesn't mean like you're just going to go and try to get these people to come to your school because they're the ones that are, going to pay, there's a revenue thing there. There's a whole nother component in terms of making sure that they're okay and they're safe in your educational, in your institution. And then furthermore, the community relationships that you develop for internships, for transitioning into careers, those companies, those organizations that you are making those relationships with will need to have that same responsibility. So, it's making sure that the bridge between school or the bridge between the education and the career, because as Marnie stated, your school does the same as mine does. You have a lifelong opportunity to have your career coach and to have, career assistance. So making sure that the partnerships are also fostering that same, diversity and inclusion, and not just as hot button words, but diversity and making sure it looks like everybody, and the inclusion of, the fairness. So, and I feel that my school is definitely doing a great job with that. As different situations panned out throughout these last few months, not only did our president reach out to us, the president of the university, or past president, Dr. Leary, but our educator coaches reached out to us. Are you guys okay? How can we help with, this and that and the other? So I just think that moving forward, that data is going to be very important, and any educational institution would be remiss to ignore it.
Thanks, Keisha. And thank you each. There are a number of questions coming in from the audience, and I think Marnie and Becky, you may respond to some of their questions. Particular interest in how to measure ROI to follow the outcomes of your students. I think, Becky, you said something, but maybe Marnie, do you want to start with how Western Governors University looks at any outcome measures beyond once your students complete? And then Becky, I think some specifics people are interested in.
Sure. So I'll talk about internal ROI and external ROI.
Yeah.
So one of the great things about being a large online university is we do have a lot of data. And as students are moving through our learning experiences, gaining competencies, taking assessments, moving through their curriculum, we are able to look at learner profile and profile clusters against instructional interventions and learning resources and assessment types against outcomes, and really understand what the ROI is on our instructional approach, our mentor approach, our learning resource approach, our assessment approach, our community of care approach, and then continuously improve that over time, not just for learners in the aggregate, but for individual learners and particular types of learners that we understand through being able to work with them over the years. So that is one way we look at the ROI of everything we do. We're spending money on this. We're spending resources on this. Is it working? Who is it working for? What do we know about how it works? How can we make more of that happen? That is a big part of our everyday work at WGU. And it's one of the benefits of online and hybrid modalities, because they generally surface more data to the schools, to the educators, to the faculty, in order to continuously improve their practice. And in a sense, everybody is a learning scientist all the time. And it never stops. So that's the way we look at ROI internally on how we organize our programs and our services. Externally, of course, we are laser focused on the bridge from completion to that job attainment or that career attainment or that social and economic mobility. We really are intent on bringing talent to opportunity. Part of that, as I said before, is how we design our programs, making sure that our embedded competencies and embedded third-party certifications are helping a student get incremental value on the way to degree. So we want to see students moving up in their careers even before they graduate. And then once they graduate, we want to make sure that they are taking what they've learned, taking these competencies, able to sell themselves, able to get that job, and able to move up in those professions. And, you know, WGU, like the case with the global campus in Colorado, has very high performance rates with employer and employer partners. So 96% of our employer partners say that they would hire another WGU grad. 95% rated WGU grads performance as excellent or very good. And 77% of our grads across both undergraduate and graduate programs say that what they learned, the competencies they accomplished, aligned with work while they were in their programs and post programs. And those numbers are numbers that we watch very carefully. Are our programs aligning with skills and competencies that are actually in demand in the marketplace? Are our students getting jobs post-graduation? Where are they getting jobs? How are those employers receiving them? And how do the students feel about the preparation they've received against the jobs and the roles and the functions that they're experiencing in their careers?
Thank you. Really fascinating thing about all those streams of data. Becky, I think even some specifics about that economic outcome tracking that you're doing, people are interested in.
Sure. So really quickly, while a student is with us, they have access, and it's just included in the per credit cost. We don't have student fees. So they get the return immediately is the 24/7 live tutoring, live tech support. It's all included in the cost. Career coaching is free, so 45-minute sessions with our career coaches to help make sure that this is the right program for them. They have a dedicated student success counselor so that they feel the value while they're going through the courses. And then inside of the actual curriculum, we've integrated The industry learning outcomes, so our faculty work with industry leaders to identify what those learning outcomes are so that as soon as they're learning things in the class, the next day they can actually apply them in the workplace. So that really helps substantiate the relevancy of what they're doing for their time. In particular, we find that that's really valuable. We've also integrated in our classrooms all the industry tech tools that they can use in the job. So that's helpful. And then our curriculum and learning aligns where it can to industry certification exams so that they're getting prepped while they're also working on their higher level degree. That helps them at all levels. Again, immediacy in the value for their time and their money. And then as they graduate and move forward, we survey the employers. We're looking at that. We look at that third-party credit bureau data to make sure that every year our graduating cohorts are moving up in their salaries. Salary is not everything. We get that. But CSU Global's brand promise is very clear in what we're trying to achieve based on our mission. So for those that want to be in a symphony or a cellist or whatever, that's great, and we absolutely respect that, but that is not how we're measuring what we're providing for our students. So we do measure the salary level as an indicator of their success in their employment. We know that our graduates are in the upper 90s to be employed on an ongoing basis. And then looking at the employer satisfaction, 96% of our employers, of our graduates, say they're highly satisfied or satisfied with their CSU Global alumni, and that the alumni themselves rank at about 97% as highly satisfied or satisfied with their experience and education with CSU Global. And I think ultimately about 30% of our students are referrals. So I think that that further drives home that they felt that it was worthwhile enough for them to recommend it to a friend or family member.
Keisha, for you, what have you felt has given you the most confidence and vision into a career trajectory after school? You're in your second year, you've had some internship experience, but what's been most valuable to you if you were to say to others, do this to help your students?
So as you had mentioned, I am a student at Bay Path University. My major is cybersecurity. And something that has definitely helped my confidence in choosing this major and sticking with it is the fact that, number one, the director of my program is a woman of color, and cybersecurity is not exactly the easiest field to break into as a woman, period, and then to be a woman of color. It is a little more difficult, although I have to say that the amount of support that I have as I'm traveling along this is immeasurable. But I will say that is the first thing, that my director is someone who is the director of the information security program. Her experience is in cybersecurity, you know, even employment-wise before, you know, being a scholastic director. Something else is the fact that there are internships out there, which gives the real-world experience, which is very necessary to obtain even an entry-level job in cybersecurity. The university that I attend has definitely made some very valuable partnerships with many organizations and companies in our local area. My internships have been, one was 100% remote, the other was about 80% remote, which also is invaluable, and especially during these times where I wouldn't have had an internship if it weren't remote. Once the pandemic kind of like shut everything down, I was literally a month into my most recent internship. So I will say the internships also give confidence because you're able to learn and be yourself and still get the skills that you need to be able to kind of like get on that trajectory of, yes, I just graduated with a cybersecurity degree. I'm also not a newbie. I have the experience, and I think that's about it for now in terms of my confidence. That's been very helpful.
Thank you, Keisha. I think we have a chance for one last quick question. There, again, a number of people participating today asking about career and technical education, professional applied technical, career, community college services, and wonder, again, maybe start with you, Marnie, and follow up Becky. Experiences, as Keisha just talked about, that applied learning that she can do remote, but in some cases that's not always the approach. And what are keys to success with the online combined with the applied? How do you solve for that puzzle? What would your advice be to others? Marnie?
So I think I understand the question. I think in terms of applied professional technical degree programs, I personally believe that you can figure out how to offer these programs online or in a hybrid format. But it really does take changing mindsets a little bit about pedagogy and about place and about whether or not you are capable as an institution to develop all the associated learning resources, experiences, or whether you need to partner with others who are doing that work. So, for example, if you are putting a technical program online, which we do, so we have a cybersecurity program online or nursing programs online, what pieces of that can be online and powerful, and what pieces of that still need to be face-to-face, for example, clinicals in the nursing setting. And as we're thinking about powerful, what are the pedagogies that we can execute online that are not PowerPoints and lectures and worksheets and readings and objective tests, but what are powerful, interactive, project-based social pedagogies that we can put online, and how are we going to support that with technology, and how are we going to support that with appropriate learning resources? Same goes for hybrid. If you're creating a hybrid program for technical and applied programs, it's not just students are either sitting in class listening to a lecture or students are sitting at home listening to a lecture. It's really thinking about, in that hybrid context, what are we doing when we're together? What is together for? How are we going to use that for social pedagogies and projects and teamwork and the things that are you can do online, but they definitely are harder than doing face-to-face. What are those pedagogies? What are those facilities? What are those supporting technical infrastructures you need in the facilities to do that kind of work? How do you plan that? How do you allocate faculty to that? And then what do you use the online part for? If the in-person experience is teamwork and project-based learning, then what is online? And how can we use that for the personalization of the learning experience, allowing students to work on their own learning traverses, on their own mastery traverses, getting special individualized attention for the learning that they're doing. And that also takes planning. So it's all possible, and all of these modalities are very powerful, but you have to have different sort of points of view and a different sort of approach when you're planning pedagogy for online versus hybrid versus face-to-face. They're not the same. And if you try to stretch out one approach that works in the face-to-face environment and make that work in the other two, it's just not going to be powerful, and ultimately it's not going to work.
Thank you. Becky, any final comments?
Yeah, just to add on to that, I won't repeat the stuff she said, but we use our faculty, almost all of our faculty have industry work experience as well as PhDs, doctorates. And they understand that the level of education and hands-on experience. So we're able to provide internships. So they're virtual, but our faculty do understand how to integrate that. So we do internships, we have apprenticeship programs, and so that it supplements to what Marnie was saying about having some hands-on ability, and we're doing it and it can work. So rethinking and having the right leadership in the faculty that have actually been in the industry to figure out how we apply in a new way the theory and the education needed at a higher level, while also getting the hands-on capability through the power of technology.
Thank you. Andrew, what did you learn today? You started us off with data, and we've had this discussion. Anything that, looking back at the data and the analysis and questions, that struck you in the conversation today?
Well, just I would say, in light of the sort of current state of the world and all of the stress that many people in this sector are undergoing, I found this conversation very hopeful about the future and all the innovation that's taking place. So just thanks to everybody and all of the audience who participated with your great questions. We're very grateful.
Yeah. I would express that thanks as well to Keisha, Becky, and Marnie individually, as well as to those of you who participated. We did, in the pursuit of ROI and data, we've put a link up for those of you who are in the audience to give us any feedback of how we can better serve you going forward in future webinars. And these materials are posted online, and you can download. This recording will be available, but also slides and summary one-pager and things. So thank you very much, Marnie, Becky, Keisha. We appreciate you and who you are and what you've shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.